All right, good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock and it is time to start. So we're going to make some announcements, go through the homework from last night, and today we have chapters 8 and 9 to get done. So I'm going to moderate the conversation real quick here and make a few announcements. We'll go over chapters 5, 6, and 7 from homework last night, and then again chapters 8 and 9 for today. So first, no recording, guys. There's no audio or video recording of any of our classrooms. The Real Estate Commission has spelled it out in their guidelines that there is to be no recording. So please comply, guys. I can't get through the computer and make you stop. You're going to do what you're going to do, but the Real Estate Commission catches anybody recording, immediate grounds for dismissal of license, just so you're aware. Secondly, please, and I say this every day, but apparently there's always one or two persons that don't hear what I say, and that there's no posting of any links in our chat room. Please, we have security issues, we have protocols, and we don't allow that to occur. If you post a link that contains malware or something and it infects our system, we're going to come after you for the cost of fixing this. So please, don't post any links on our chat room. No foul language during our discussions. If you're having connection issues, couple hints. Number one, close out any and all applications and programs running on your desktop or you're in your background somewhere. They take up bandwidth. This is an audio-visual presentation demanding a lot of bandwidth. So please, a lot of people say, oh, you're breaking up, the audio's bad, and they got like 6 or 7 programs running in the background. That's why. So close all those out. You're still having a problem. There's a little refresh marker. It's a little semicircle with an arrow. Hit that. It's up by your address bar. And you'll reestablish a connection. You'll just have to log in. You won't be penalized for a few minutes offline, but if you're more than half an hour at a time, then your time will be affected. If you have administrative questions like, where do I find this? How do I record that? Where do I get information on this or that? You can always go to recareercenter.com and find that information, or wait till noon when one of our administrative staff, either Lauren or Noel, or both, as you've seen in the past, come on and discuss all these issues with you. Please, if you do have a question, stick around right after we break for lunch, because that's when they come on. Don't go away, grab something, do something, come back 20 minutes later and expect them to answer your questions, because chances are they've already answered them 4 or 5 times, and we don't want to keep doing that. If you have any other questions about real estate matters you want to discuss and it's not part of our topics, I always stick around after school. If you have questions, I'm always available to you. I always post my email address at the end of every day if you want to reach out to me for some reason. If I respond to you, I will respond to you. Whether I can help you or not remains to be the question. We have breaks during the day. We have a coffee break at 10:30 to 11, a lunch break at 12 to 1. And a coffee break from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. And as I say every day, please pre-read your chapters before you come to school. It makes for much better discussion, much better comprehension, and your retention goes way up on this information. If you don't, then you're left unknowing what those topics really involve. You tend to ask questions that everybody else seems to be aware of, and it just doesn't go very well for you. So please pre-read these chapters. It makes a very big difference. So if there are any last-minute questions before I start, please ask now. If not, I'm going to begin our homework review and then chapters 8 and 9. So 7 Langston, you're typing a question. What's your question? Okay, yeah, guys, quick reminder, please don't let your dialogue bar be open. It looks like you're asking a question, and we always wait for questions. So if you're not asking a question, you're just delaying everybody in class, and that doesn't go well either. Do I need to start chapter? I don't know. That's an administrative question that you need to ask our administrative staff. So you can either call, text, go online, or just wait till noon till they come on. They'll answer your question. I don't know. Okay, other than that, I don't see other questions. So let's do our chapter, the homework review from last night, chapters 5, 6, and 7. So Here we go for chapter 5. The answers to the homework questions are as follows. Number 1, B for boy. 2, B for boy. 3A. 4, B for boy. 5A. 6D as in dog. 7A. 8B for boy. 9C. And 10D as in dog. Again, chapter 5. Homework question answers are number 1, B boy. 2, B boy. 3A. 4, B boy. 5A. 6D dog. 7A. 8, B boy. 9C. And 10D dog. Chapter 6, the homework answers are as follows. Number 1A, 2, B boy. 3A. 4B for boy. 5B for boy. 6C. 7C. 8C. 9D for dog. And 10D as in dog. Again, chapter 6, they are number 1A. 2, B boy. 3A. 4, B boy. 5, B boy. 6C. 7C. 8C. 9D dog. And 10D dog. For chapter 7, the homework answers are as follows. Number 1, D dog. 2, C. 3, B for boy. 4, D dog. 5, C. 6, C. 7, B for boy. 8, B for boy. 9, B for boy. And 10, C. Chapter 7, once again, they are number 1, D dog. 2, C. 3, B boy. 4, D dog. 5C. 6C. 7, B boy. 8, B boy. 9, B boy. And 10, C. Were there any questions on the homework before we move on to chapters 8 and 9? Not seeing any? Then let's get busy with chapters 8 and 9 today. So if you would, please turn in your 14th edition textbook to chapter 8, page 121, and we will begin. Real estate taxes. What a thrilling topic for today, huh? Yeah. Well, anyway, at the end of this chapter, you should be able to describe the difference between general real estate taxes and special assessment taxes. Both are specific liens against your real estate. And you should be able to explain the taxation process. Now, taxes, your property taxes have to be paid every year. In fact, you pay them every quarter, whether you pay them directly or the bank pays them. Your property taxes are paid quarterly to your town. The tax lien is there to enforce the recollection of taxes for the purpose of paying for government functions. So I'm going to open the discussion up. What do your property taxes actually pay for? Anybody? Talking about your property taxes, not your income taxes, your property taxes. Schools, correct. Pays for your schools. What else? Parks. Roads. Street lights. Local government, right. City, yep, that's your municipality. The police. Fire. You pretty much guys have it. You know, it's pretty much everything, right? They pay for a lot of environmental. Well, yeah, to a point, yes, environmental issues. Big salaries, city budgets, road construction, government offices. Okay, good. Thanks for responding, guys. Good responses. Your property taxes pay for a lot. Your property tax is a general real estate tax levied against the value of your home. Therefore, they're called ad valorem taxes, meaning a Latin term for according to value. So general real estate taxes are one form of a way a municipality can collect revenue to operate the municipality. The other one is a special assessment, sometimes called an improvement tax. A special assessment tax goes directly against properties that benefit from certain repairs. In other words, let's say your town decides that the two streets around you need sidewalks. So they put in sidewalks, and each homeowner on those two streets gets a bill for the cost of installing sidewalks on their property. No one else in town gets that charge, only those properties benefiting from the improvement. Whether you want them or not, if the city says there's sidewalks, you got sidewalks, and you have to pay for them. That's called the special assessment or improvement tax. And as I said, both these taxes are specific liens against a specific piece of property. And tax liens have priority over any and all other liens. Your bank mortgage, your home equity loan, those are secondary. Your property tax bill must be paid first always. Now, moving on. Your ad valorem tax is according to value, as I said, which means your real estate holding is assessed for certain values. We're going to discuss that in a few minutes. The money generated from these ad valorem taxes from the government agencies and schools and police and fire and DPW and roads and parks and recreation and mayor and council and administrative staff and all the equipment and everything else that goes into your town, they pay for. And it funds, certain residents get certain annual tax deductions for property taxes, and certain people get exemptions from real estate taxes. And there are other things I'm going to talk about real quick. First of all, certain people who get tax deductions would be people like senior citizens, 65 years and older. If they're living in their home, they can get up to $250 deduction against their property tax. Woo, $250. Whoa, what a benefit. I'm paying $14,000 a year. I get $250. Well, it's something. So a senior citizen gets $250. A veteran who was wounded or disabled can get $250. However, we just voted in November to increase that deduction for any and all veterans, even non-wounded or non-disabled veterans. If you just served in the military or the armed forces for the country, you can get $250 deduction off your property taxes. So seniors and certain veterans can get $250. And if you're a senior and a veteran, you get $500 together off your property taxes. Now you're talking, there's some money. If you were a veteran who was wounded or disabled because of your active service to the country, you can ask for and receive complete property tax forgiveness. When I was a councilman in Oakland years ago, we had two veterans returning from the wars in Afghanistan who were disabled and wounded. And they applied and we granted them complete property tax forgiveness. You know, that causes my taxes to go up by $1 or $2. And you know what? That's an extra $1 or $2 I don't mind paying for those guys who did what they had to do. And it's not just guys. One of them was a woman. So whoever served in the armed forces, are very deserving of whatever we can do for them. Now, also, seniors, by the way, are eligible to apply for a senior tax freeze, it's called. In other words, if you're 65 and older and you live in the house, you can apply to have your taxes frozen in time as long as you own your house. Meaning if the taxes go up next year, yours stay the same. And just announced yesterday, the state of New Jersey is extending the deadline for the senior tax freeze program. If, by the way, guys, you know a senior citizen who owns a house, who lives in the house that they own, they can apply up till February 1st by going to nj.gov/treasury. I'm going to put that right in the chat section real quick. nj.gov/treasury. Here's right. Got the true. There you go. Now, if you're a senior citizen or you know a senior citizen who owns and lives in their home, they can apply for the senior tax freeze up until February 1st to freeze their property taxes at the current rate. That way, as long as they live in the house, it will never go up. But when they do sell the house, then the taxes will change to the correct amount. So if you know a senior, or you're related, or you are one, you want to freeze your taxes, nj.gov/treasury, do it before February 1st, and you can have your property taxes frozen. All right, let's move on. So there's certain exemptions, and there's also certain special tax treatments of certain properties. If you're a non-profit organization, well, you don't pay any taxes on your property. Churches, non-profit healthcare facilities don't pay real estate taxes. Farmland assessments are much more beneficial to farmers than regular property owners. In other words, if you own and operate a farm, and I'll give you the definition of a farm in a few minutes, you can get up to 90% reduction in your property tax bill. It's a huge savings because New Jersey wants to encourage the operation and continuation of farms. In order to qualify, however, you must be using a minimum of 5 acres as crop production. You must earn at least $500 from the sale of crops. And you must have been doing farming for a minimum of 2 years to qualify for the reassessed tax amount. And if you do qualify, your taxes shrink tremendously. New Jersey wants to encourage the continuation of farmland. Unfortunately, saving a few dollars on your taxes can't compete to the developer's almighty dollar. In this part of New Jersey, northern New Jersey, specifically northeastern New Jersey, farms that I remember growing up, my backyard was the Piro Farms in Montvale and Park Ridge. It was awesome. Right out my back door, acres and acres, as long as you consider it, apple trees. It was awesome. One day, a developer, however, came in, plowed all those apple trees over and put streets and houses in, and all the farmland was gone. Today, DePiro Farms is gone. Now it's a super Wegmans shopping center. Tice Farms, Van Riper Farms, gone. Secor Farms in Mahwah is only 1/3 of its original size because they sold off 2/3 of their farmland to make a lot of money from the developers who want to put houses on those farms. Millions of dollars we're talking about. DeCole Farms in Dumont, gone. Now it's all housing. Many other farms in this area are long gone because, gee, if I'm a farmer, let's say I get up at 4 o'clock every day, hit the hay at 10 p.m., work my butt off all day, barely make a nickel, and I can get a property tax reduction of a few tens of thousands of dollars. Or I could sell out tomorrow for $12 to $15 million and retire in luxury. Gee, which one am I going to do? So you can see, even though New Jersey wants to encourage preserving farmland, There's no competition with the almighty developer's dollar. Now, down South Jersey, there's farms galore. Not as many people want to move and develop land in South Jersey like they do want to do it up here. So there is additional farmland assessments for those farm operators to reduce their tax burden. Now, before I move on, did anybody have any questions about what we're talking about? If taxes aren't included in the mortgage payment they pay a month, do they still qualify for the senior tax freeze? No. Well, yeah, you could, but the senior has to make application for the senior tax freeze. Yes, Taryn, you do have beautiful farms down there. A very close friend works on a farm down in Hamilton. There's beautiful farms down there. Horse farms, sod farms, all kinds of farms. Couple more questions before we move on. Anybody? Rachel, Bert, do you have a question? I've seen people sell firewood. Can you get a tax exempt for that? Not that I'm aware of. I don't know, but you have to ask your municipality. Maybe they have a special law. I don't know. I have a question on taxes, but I'll wait until we get to the section. Good idea. Rebate for tenants. Explain, Jose, what are you talking about? Donations. Guys, I don't understand words. I mean, that's not a question to me. Does anybody have any questions, or you just want to make a statement? I don't know what you're trying to do. 90% of the, up to, Mary, I said up to. There's no guarantee you're getting a full 90%. It's up to that amount. Does the sidewalk tax and the special assessment continue after you sell for next buyer? Well, Stephen, the property owner has to pay that. If they can't pay it, they could make installment payments, but when selling, they have to make aware to the buyer that if there's more money owed, then the buyer may be responsible, but the buyer may insist that the seller pay it from the proceeds of the sale. So it's all presented through the listing and negotiated. Donations are tax deductions. Okay, I don't know how that applies here. Okay, anybody else with a question before we move on? It's in the book that a tenant may get a rebate, 8% rebate. Yeah, we haven't gotten there, Jose. Boy, you know, guys, please don't jump ahead and interject stuff when we're not discussing it. It just throws everybody off. Just wait your turn. We'll get there. We will, I promise. I haven't talked about that yet. Does a married couple own a house? Do both have the 65? No, only one has to qualify and they have to live in the house. All seniors who are 65 and older who own and live in the property can qualify for $250 tax reduction. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so let me moderate and move on. In test, what kind of question will come up from this part? The whole chapter is subject to questions, Jinyu. The whole chapter. All right, moving on. Other exempt properties, religious and charitable organizations don't pay property tax. Disabled veterans and their surviving spouses, as I said before, can qualify and get total tax exemptions. But if I'm the real estate professional marketing property, when I put one of these homes on the market for sale, I must notify any and all potential buyers of what the true tax figure would be if they weren't a senior or a wounded or disabled veteran. So if they're getting $500 deduction because they're a senior and a veteran, then I have to tell the buyer your actual tax is going to be $500 more than what they actually pay right now. So we have to always portray the true tax figure when discussing properties. Now, to address Jose's statement about the 18% rebate on rent. Under New Jersey's law, homeowners who pay real estate taxes can apply for what's called the homestead rebates. If you own real estate and pay taxes, usually at the end of September, October-ish, something like that, you get a letter from the state of New Jersey saying, here's your property rebate tax application. Please fill it out and send it back to us. And then you get a check. Because you paid property taxes in New Jersey, you get a check back, a homestead rebate. Owners of multifamily and residential rental properties also apply for that and get it back. And they're supposed to, Jose, pass through those savings to the tenants who have paid rent. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, Jose, I don't know one property owner who passes through their property tax rebates to their tenants. They're supposed to, but nobody does. So if you want to hold your landlord accountable, then you can charge them in court with non-payment of rebated taxes. Tell me how that goes for you when you're done. And let me know how much your rent went up and what kind of extra conditions your landlord may have put on you if you did. I'm not trying to be facetious here, guys. I'm just telling you, landlords don't want to share their rebates with you. And if you make a stink about it, your rent just might go up. Or it may be harder for you to operate what you want to do on those properties. Just saying. Now, I'm not saying that's legal or not. I'm just saying that's the way the world works right now. Not that I agree with it, but that's the way the world works. So I hope I answered your question, Jose. If not, what other question might you have? Was there anybody else, by the way, with a question? Surviving spouses of disabled veterans are exempt until they are remarried. That is correct, Ayana. No more rebate checks, you get credit. Yeah, that's right, because they don't have any money to give you right now. New Jersey doesn't have any money. So they're giving you credits for the next coming year's taxes. Ridiculous. Where do we apply for exemptions? To your local municipal tax assessor. It's right down in Borough Hall or Town Hall. If they freeze the account, who pays? I'm sorry, Ayana, I'm missing what you're explaining here. What do you mean freeze the account? Who's freezing what account? Oops, let me open that up again. Ayana, I'm sorry, who's freezing and what accounts are they freezing? And what's back taxes? How did that get in here? Arson, if you apply and get the property tax freeze, it's for how long the senior still lives in that house. Once they move out or sell the house, and the taxes go back to your regular amount. How to apply for homestead rebate? Oh, it comes to you in the mail, Sarah, in the mail. Oh, for the senior tax freeze. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Again, you have up until February 5th. They extended the deadline. Normally it's by the end of the year, but you have up until February 1st, rather, this year. If they freeze taxes for seniors and their child inherits home, does the freeze stop? Yes. Once you're 65 and you don't have to pay taxes, whoa, wait a minute, wait, stop this. Hold the presses. I want to know, as soon as I turn 65, how I stop paying taxes. So, Ayana, once you're 65 and you don't have to pay taxes, who pays the taxes? Can you lose your home? What do you mean don't have to pay taxes? I'm very suspect of where you might live and what rules you're abiding by. Yes, Sherry, all rebates are based on incomes and not everyone qualifies, correct? Guys, we're getting way off track. None of this has to do with anything in the textbook. So I just want to keep you focused. Can you explain the senior freeze again then, please? Okay, let me moderate the conversation and then move on. The senior tax freeze is available to any senior citizen who's 65 and older who still lives in the house that they own. They can apply to nj.gov/treasury to have their property taxes frozen at the current rate for as long as they occupy the house that they live in. The moment they die, leave the house, or sell the house, or pass it on to heirs, is when the taxes revert to what they're supposed to be. So you have until February 1st this calendar year. They extended it to apply for and get the senior tax freeze if you're 65 years of age or older. You don't stop paying taxes. You just don't pay any increases in the future. That's all. All right, I want to move on here, guys, but one more time, is there any other follow-up questions before I move on? Hopefully I answered your questions here. Is freezing mean tax never go high? Boy, you got me on what you mean. Is the tax freeze mean your taxes never go up? Yes, that's exactly what I said. Does the tax decrease too? Whoa, let me ask this question, moderating here. Whose property taxes went down? And no, your taxes won't go down if you get a tax freeze. It stays the same. Well, maybe I'm not speaking English or something this morning. Maybe I need to take an English course. Do you have to be a senior for February 1st, Luciana? February 1st. Deadline on the property tax freeze, not the rebate. The property tax freeze was extended. The application was extended till February 1st this year. Okay, guys, I gotta move on. We're way out of bounds here and we have a lot to cover. So please understand, I want to keep you focused on the stuff you have to know for an exam. I was just giving this extra information for gratification, but it's not going to be on the test, just so you know. All right, moving on. Special assessments. The ad valorem tax is the general property tax you pay according to the value assigned to your real estate holdings. We talked about how that is valued in the near future today. But the other tax, the special assessment tax, also known as the improvement tax, says that any property owner who benefits from an improvement must pay for the cost of that improvement. Sidewalks I use. What about if it's street lining? Well, the town engineer has determined that your neighborhood needs new street lights. So they go out and they put on all new street lights, which cost a pretty penny. Well, only that neighborhood who benefited from the increased new lighting has to pay for the installation costs of that lighting. No one else in town pays for it. Only those properties that benefit from the improvement. You don't have a say on special improvements. The town does it, you pay for it. So these taxes are used for street lighting, curbs, walkways, all kinds of things. You can either pay a one lump sum to pay it off, or you may be able to work out an installment payment on the special assessment with your town over a number of years. However, if you're selling your house and you haven't paid your assessment, again, you have to disclose to the new buyers that there are open assessments against the property that must be paid. And then you have to work out with the buyer who's going to pay them. And if you're a new homeowner and get hit with a special assessment, that could hurt. You know, new first-time home buyers are scraping every penny they got together to buy a house. Then they got to get like lawnmowers and shovels and rakes and all kinds of stuff. And they're very tapped out as far as cash goes. And then all of a sudden the town says, oh, by the way, you owe us another $7,500 for the new sidewalks we put in. Well, you might not be able to handle that right away. So you're probably going to have to talk to your town to work out an installment payment over time. All right, moving on, the tax process. So, how is my property determined as far as value and how much taxes I have to pay and all that other good stuff? Good questions. Thanks for asking, by the way. So, every October 1st, your tax assessors list the assessed values on all properties in your town. Many towns do it before October 1st. Now, October 1st starts the last quarter of the year fiscally. January through December, October, November, December, the last quarter of the year. That assessment that is posted stays with the property, the value they assign to it, until the next time the town reassesses all properties. There are some properties out there with taxes assessed on them at values from 20 years ago, believe it or not. That means the markets have changed dramatically over the past 20 years, haven't they? Since 2001? Heck yeah. Property values have gone up. Now, we also had a problem in 2008 where property values crashed, but their assessed values still stayed high. So a lot of people appealed their taxes. So let's talk through this, the taxation process. New Jersey's goal of tax assessment is to tax at full value. That means the goal would be, excuse me, every time a house gets sold, the value that it was sold for would be recorded at its market value and therefore the assessed value, and that's what your taxes would be based on. However, this goal, even though ambitious, is very impossible to perform, both financially and physically. The reason I say that is because of the following scenario. Let's say my 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath ranch house in Oakland, New Jersey is assessed for $475,000 currently. 6 months from now, I sell it for $550,000 because the market's hot. The town would like to tax my property based at $550,000. But if they did, that means every other 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house in Oakland with similar sized property has to be reassessed at new values, and then their taxes reassigned. And that's just on one sale of a property. What if there are 10 sales in a day? Then every property, like those properties that got sold, have to be reassessed every day. You can see where this could be financially and physically impossible to do. Even though the goal is ambitious, it's impossible to perform. Therefore, a periodic revaluation of all properties is undertaken by your town. The last time my town revaluated for taxes was about 10 years ago. There are other towns that had reevaluations just done the last couple of years. Let's look at what the values of homes have done. Through the 90s, they kind of stagnated, went down a little bit and came back up. It was a very shaky market in the 90s. Then in 2002 to 2008, the market skyrocketed in values. And by the end of 2007, values had increased, let's say up to here. Huge amounts of increase. They were here, now they're up here. So at the end of 2007, many towns said, let's revalue all the properties at the current new values assigned to them. Look at how much money we can make and increase revenue from taxes. So they did. And then a year later, 2008, the market went like this. And in 2009 and 10 was down here. All those taxes are based on values of 2007. So not all, but many property owners said, heck, if I'm paying values based on an old value, I want to appeal my taxes, and did, and won. Your Honor, I'm being taxed at $500,000 value when my actual property value now is only $375,000. I should get a rebate and get lower taxes. And the judge would say, yes, you're right. They can't tax you at a higher value and then it's actually worse. So you win your appeal and got a rebate back from your town and lower taxes. It was great. Problem was, the town now is experiencing a shortfall in revenue and can't meet its budgetary obligation, because all that tax revenue, which they were counting on, is not going to be collected. Therefore, a lot of towns had fiscal problems and had to borrow money. And when you borrow money, that increases your taxes because you have to pay for the borrow and the interest on the principal. So your taxes go up as a necessary result of that. It was a vicious cycle. And towns had to now say, okay, we got to reevaluate all these properties to stop this bloodshed. So in 2009 and 2010, many towns reassessed values that were up here down to the current rates down here. And no one now could appeal their taxes and win big awards anymore because they're being taxed at current values. And now the current taxation value that they assigned in 2010 stays with that property until the next time it's revalued. And over the past 10 years, the values of 2009 have now steadily increased up to where they were just prior, or actually have exceeded in some areas the 2008 height or 2007 height of the market. Many towns may be reconsidering the need to revalue very soon. So the periodic revaluation is whenever the town decides it's important to undertake to avoid shortfalls in budgets. And every property owner who feels that they're being overtaxed has the right to appeal the assessment on their property through the county tax assessor's office. Now, before I move on, did anybody have any basic questions about this taxation process? If a senior citizen has a we're back to that again, okay. If a senior citizen has a freeze put on their property taxes, then realized property values goes down, can they have their taxes? No, they got a freeze. They're not going to be able to fight that one. Do special assessments have to be disclosed to new buyers? I did say that twice, Rika, yes. I bought my home in Jersey City a few years ago, and they hadn't assessed any house in the area since 1985, and a year after I bought, they finally did do assessments in JC, and taxes almost doubled. And Christina, that's a big issue. Plus, many of those condo buildings that were built in the 90s and early 2000s in Jersey City, they had a tax abatement issued against those properties, meaning they were given up to like a 75% reduction in the property tax costs for about 19 years. And now all those abatements are ending and property taxes are starting to skyrocket in Jersey City. Yeah, big problem down there. Can you go over the math for the tax rates? Haven't even gotten there yet, Iana. Haven't even gotten there yet. We will. We will. Believe me, we will. So is there a successful appraisal on an assessed value? So if there is a successful appeal on an assessed value, will that now leave the budget missing money? Yes, Rachel, it could. Yes. Did you skip my religious organizations? Did I skip your religious organizations' very favorable tax exemptions in the tens? I'm sorry. I don't understand what you're talking about, Trinidad. I don't even know what you're referring to. In New Jersey, how long does it take to assess the tax rate? It may take, depending on the size of the town, it could take several weeks to several months. In New Jersey, how long does it take to assess the tax rate? Okay, guys, again, we're asking questions that have nothing to do with what you have to remember. So please, let's try to keep on topic here. That's all. I see a couple people still typing, so I'll wait for your questions. Can a town decline to sell to a nonprofit since they don't? How is the town able to decline the sale of a property? I'm not sure what you're asking, Ramneet. In the United States here, the government doesn't have any say in private contracts or sales. So the town can't deny a sale of a property to a nonprofit. I think some of these questions are just beginning to confuse people. They are, Nicholas, and that's why I'm asking people to please stay focused. Are golf courses considered special assessments that all properties have to? No, golf courses have to pay their own taxes. They're not tax exempt. And if it's a county course, then the county pays the taxes on those properties. Boy, some of you guys have some really interesting questions. So Mary, I'll ask your question and then that's it. I do need to move on. You're all losing me with these questions. I know, right? So I'm going to have to stop this, guys. We're way off course. Please, guys, I understand your need for knowledge and want to know, but if it's not in the textbook, then you're not going to be tested on it. So please, let's stay focused and ask questions pertinent to the information being presented. When we get off course like that, I'm guilty as everybody else. I love to talk about real estate, and I'll talk all day long, but it doesn't do anybody any good. So I'll need to try a little better to keep us focused. How's that? All right, here we go. So your taxes are paid quarterly and undergo periodic revaluations to determine the valuation determined taxes. You have the right to appeal your taxes every year starting January 1st up to April, I believe it's 15th or so. It doesn't give you a time frame in the book, I don't believe. But the county has up until November 10th that year to make a decision as to whether to grant your appeal or not. And if they do, then you're going to get a rebate plus a lowering of taxes in the future. If they don't, then you still pay your taxes. Now, someone asked about the math and equalization and all that good stuff. So this is now where we're going to talk about that. So I know you have a thirst for knowledge, guys, but again, everything's being presented in an orderly fashion, and we'll get to those things. So equalization, what's that? I'm going to use a whiteboard to give an example here. First of all, I'm going to ask, out of every $1 that you pay in property taxes, what's the percentage that go to schools? What's the percentage that go to local government? What's the percentage that goes to your county? And what's the percentage that goes to other things? Anybody want to give me an answer to what the percentage, what the percentage of your property taxes go to schools? What do you say? What percentage of $1? How many cents in a dollar goes to pay for schools? Anybody? 25%, 25%. Okay, 35, 12, 25. So everybody's pretty much in the same 5%. Okay. Thanks for responding. I appreciate it. So here's the breakdown in Oakland. Out of every $1 you pay in property taxes, 66 cents goes to schools. What? No, I'm being very serious. Schools cost a fortune. In Oakland, out of every dollar I pay in my property tax, 66 cents pays for schools. My local government collects roughly 24 cents of every dollar to operate. That's the police, fire, DPW, municipality, everything. Parks and recreation, sports programs, you name it. The local government takes 24 cents of it a dollar. Let's see, that's 60, 78, that's 90 cents. Where's the rest of the money go? Well, we have to pay for the county. That takes about 9 cents. And then the other, which is open space funding, special purchases funding, things like that, account for about 1 cent on the dollar. And by the way, libraries are in with the county government. They cost money too. You have to pay for your libraries. So library and county cost about 9 cents. Together, that makes up $1 of taxes being paid. The majority and the lion's share goes to operating a school. It said in New Jersey, on average, it costs about $19,000 a year to educate a child. So let's think about that. If you have 3 kids in the school system, technically you'd owe something like $57,000 a year to educate your kids. But you don't have that kind of money. But when spread out throughout the entire town, like me, now I have no kids in school. I'm still paying school taxes for other kids to go to school. It's the way we work things out here. So understand, guys, your dollar isn't just like, oh, it goes most, it's all that wasteful spending in local government. If you got a problem with your taxes, right here is where you should be making a stink. And no one, and I mean no one, goes to school budget hearings. And because they don't, there's no oversight, there's no supervision, there's no citizen complaints, because it's all about the kids, isn't it? Or is it? I'm not anti-teacher, believe me, I'm not. But I do believe there's quite a bit of wasteful spending in our educational processes, just saying. And by the way, New Jersey is very unfair with taxes. This is not, you don't need to know this, but my 66 cents on a dollar doesn't always go to the municipal, to go to the local schools. In fact, out of that, probably about 50 cents goes to the local schools. About 16 cents goes to other schools in other counties. Yeah, that means I'm paying for kids to be schooled in other places in New Jersey, not in my town. That's the way those school budgets work, just so you know. So anyway, your taxes go out to pay for a lot of things. So one of those expenses was the county. So let's take Bergen County, Bergen. I'm terrible with this mouse writing. I need a pen with a whiteboard app. So Bergen County, roughly 70 towns in Bergen County, roughly, but some towns are bigger than others. Let's take Bergenfield, which is supposedly an average sized town in Bergen County. 70 towns. And then let's take a town like, let's say Paramus, which is a large town, and Oakland, which is a small town. So how equalization works is this: Bergen County determines how much of a budgetary obligation they're going to need from revenue. Then they divide that up into all the towns in the county and send them a bill for their participatory values. So let's say Bergen says Bergenfield is an average town. Well, their participation in the county budget would be 100% valuation of all properties. Paramus, however, is huge. So their participation may be 125% based on valuations, much higher than Bergenfield. But here's Oakland, little tiny town in Bergen County. We may be billed at 75% of valuation for our cost of county services. And when you even it all up, it comes out to 100%. So an equalization factor is used to even out the cost over different revenue sources. That's what an equalization rate actually is. Now, before I move on, does anybody have any question about the reassessments or appealing taxes or the equalization rate? Do we have to know this part for the test? Yes. At least that's what my town makes it look like. Haven't seen improvements in years, and yet tax revenue is booming in our town. Schools are overcrowded and underfunded. What about how the schools are closed due to COVID? Okay, you're way out of our realm here. I could care less, and I don't know how schools actually do things. It has nothing to do with our test. No, that's not the math. That's not it, Anya. I haven't even gotten to math yet. I'm just trying to explain concepts. I don't know why you need to be so impatient, but we will get there. Please, guys. There's an ordered process here. We'll get there, I promise. Anybody else with a question based on what we've just talked about? And Rachel, Bert, you have a question? We'll wait. And so does Kieran. So if a parcel of land that has high assessment is next to one with low assessment, the lower assessed community has to pay the same tax. Wait a minute, what was that? So if a parcel of land that has a high value, okay, it's assessed for a very high amount of money, is next to one with a low, so it's the one next to it is assessed for a very low amount of value. The lower assessed community. How did community get in here? I thought we were talking about parcels, individual pieces of property. So now I'm very confused, Rachel. I don't even know what you're asking anymore. Or anyway, let's just move on. Just to clarify, the equalization factor is to equalize taxes across New Jersey municipalities. That's an example that I used, yes. Okay. Is there a math question or test? Yeah, there's a bunch of math questions on the test. Do we need calculators? Yes, you need a calculator. That was explained several times. Boy, okay, apparently I didn't do this correct. So where did 125% come from? Because of the equalization factor applied to the town. That's where it came from. All right, got to move on, guys. Got to move on. Now, tax rates, tax bills. Now we're going to get into the actual math of calculating your taxes. Again, the equalization factor I used was based on the different size towns and their budgetary obligation to operate the county. That was the example I used for equalization. That wasn't the definition of equalization. It was an example of equalization, just so you know. Now, tax rates. How are taxes determined, Tim? I gotta know. Okay, very good. Let's talk about taxes. That's what this is about. So every year, your town has to determine what its budgetary obligations are going to be. Let's say the town in its budget hearings has determined that they need $20 million to operate the town that year. And then the school says, yeah, and we need $40 million to operate the school budgets this year. So you have a total budgetary obligation of $60 million. Woo, $60 million, that's a big budget. Well, not for most towns, believe it or not. So, once we understand what the budgetary obligations are, how much revenue has to be raised, then we've got to take that amount and determine how much each property has to be paying taxes for. So how do we do that? Well, then secondly, we have to get a number of all properties taxable in the town and what their values are and add them up. So in this case, we're going to have $2.4 billion in valuations across the entire town. $2.4 billion. Wow, that's a lot of money. Well, yeah, it is. Costs a lot of money. Well, values of homes add up. Homes, commercial businesses, retail stores, office buildings, et cetera, 2.4 billion. So what we have to do is take 2.4 billion and divide it into the amount of budgetary obligations we have, 60 million. And if you do the math, it comes out to roughly 2.49%, roughly. Therefore, if your house was valued at $500,000 and the tax rate was 2.49%, you come up with a tax bill of, let's see, times 2.49%, $12,450 which would be your tax bill for that property valued at $500,000 with a tax rate of 2.49%. Now, I know I did that quick and dirty, but I think I explained to it very easily, but I'll do it once again. The town budget, the municipal budget, and the school budget, those are the budgets, and the county government come out to, what did I say, 60 million that you need. Total, that's the budget obligation. Total valuations in the town are $2.4 billion. You take 60 million and divide it by 2.4 billion. So let me do the math. 60 million divided by 2.4 billion. Oh boy, clear. 2 billion, sorry, 400 million. Oops, 24 million, one more time. There you go, 240 billion. Oops, damn it. Sorry, guys, 2400. That's 2,000, 24,000, 240,000, 2 million, 24 million, 240 million. My calculator doesn't go that. But anyway, it comes out to the following. You divide 60 billion by 2.4, it gives you a tax rate, roughly 2.5% of a tax rate. So if your house is valued at 500,000, you would apply the 2.5% rate, 12,500 in taxes. That would be your tax bill. This would be your tax rate. Now, questions? No questions. Great. Let's move on then. All right. So tax bills are sent out every year and must be paid every quarter. January 1st, you have to pay your taxes. It's due. But you have until February 1st to pay your taxes, 30 days. So January, February, March, then April 1st, you have another quarterly tax bill that's due on May 1st, late date. July 1st, August 1st. October 1st, November 1st. That's how it's done. So if you pay your taxes on time, you have no problems. However, what if you don't pay your taxes or you don't pay them on time? Then the town has a problem because they're going to be short revenue to pay for budgetary requirements. What are they going to do? They're going to have to insist that that property owner pay their property taxes. So, and this is for every taxpayer out there who pays property taxes. Your town places a tax lien on your property on the 1st of January of every year. So already on January 1st, you have a tax lien against your property. Now that tax lien is not enacted, it's just on file. If you pay your taxes, no problem. April, you pay your taxes, no problem. July, you pay your taxes, no problem. October, you pay your taxes, the tax lien is erased. And then the next January 1st, a new tax lien is on your property on all taxpayer properties. January 1st is a tax lien. And if you pay your taxes, no problems. The problem comes in when you don't pay your taxes. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Excuse me. But one last point, I'm sorry, before I moved on. Tax rates. Remember that 2.49% I gave you as an expression in a percentage? Tax rates are expressed in mills, M-I-L-L-S. A mill, boy, I need to get a pen, is equivalent to 1/1000th of a dollar. Now, we don't use the metric system here in the good old US of A, but if you've been around, you know what the metric system is. 1 meter. Anybody know how big 1 meter is? That's 3.3 feet. That's how big a meter is. A centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. And a millimeter is 1/1000th of a meter. So the term mil directly comes from the metric system and infers 1/1000th of a dollar. That's the accepted rate across the entire United States, except here in New Jersey. What? In New Jersey, a mil represents 1/100th of a dollar, or 1 cent. That's crazy. Why do we do stuff backwards? Because we're Jersey, that's why. I have no answer for you except that we're New Jersey. So in New Jersey, a mil equals 1/100th of a dollar, 1 cent. All right, now let's move on. Taxation process. You don't pay your taxes the first quarter, you're going to get a letter from your town. You've not paid your first taxes. You need to pay your taxes so the town can pay its budgetary obligation. Please contact the assessor's office and make up that payment as soon as possible, and you may have to pay a late fee. Well, if you contact the office and pay the bill, no problem. Many times they waive the late fee and know there's no big problem. However, now, by the way, a lot of you folks pay your property taxes with your mortgage payment. So if your bank doesn't send in the tax payment on time, you get the letter. And many of you have gotten this letter. Hey, you're a delinquency in your taxes. You call up your bank, say, what the heck's going on? They go, oh, don't worry. And they send a check in and it's all cleared up. But if you're not having your mortgage company pay your taxes, then you must pay your taxes physically. You have to go down to your assessor's office and pay them taxes, or send it into the mail. So you pay your taxes quarterly. If you miss a quarter, you get a letter. If you miss the second quarter in a row and still haven't paid the first, you get a little stronger worded letter. Oh, we got a problem here. Please contact the office so we can rectify this situation. If you pay the money, then it goes away. But if you don't, and now you miss your third quarter of taxes, it means you're now 9 months in arrears. Then your municipality has no choice except to demand tax payment from you. If you don't pay, then your property's taxes are going to be auctioned off to an investor. It's called a tax certificate sale. Many towns have tax certificate sales, usually around about October, November, December, after the third quarter of non-paid taxes. And they put a note in the public newspaper, and the sheriff's office sometimes does it for them, but mostly it's done in the newspaper by the town, saying, hey, we got a tax sale coming up. All those interested should come to the municipal courthouse at 10 a.m. on Wednesday on a certain date at a certain time and place. And the following properties, tax assessments will be auctioned off. And they listed properties whose taxes are delinquent for about 3 quarters or more. Investors look at this, research the properties, and then go to the tax assessment or tax certificate sale. And what happens is the municipality stands up and says, okay, we have this tax. And let's say I didn't pay my taxes for 10 grand this year. I'm in arrears 10 grand. I haven't paid 3 quarters. So they say, okay, we have this property at so-and-so, and it's $10,000 in arrear. Do I have a bid? Then somebody stands up and goes 18. Another guy stands up and goes 16. Another guy 15. Another guy 13. Another guy 12. Another guy 11. Another guy 10. And that's it. No more bids. Sold. 10. What are they bidding on? They're bidding on interest percentages, what they'd accept as a return for buying the debt. So now that this person won the tax debt for 10%, they go to the municipal borough hall, pay the 10 grand for me. Now my taxes are cleaned up for the town. And whatever cost it cost them gets tacked on to the $10,000. My taxes are paid to the town. However, I'm still in debt to a tax certificate holder for the 10 grand plus the 10% interest he charges. So I get a letter very shortly after the tax certificate sale. Dear Mr. Jensen, I'm the investor who bought your tax debt. You owe me 10 grand plus 10% from the day I purchased the sale on that 10,000 plus the cost of me acquiring the debt. When will I be expecting a check so I can calculate the total amount due? I ignore it. 3 months later, another letter comes from the same investor. You need to even up with me, or remember, I have a statutory right of redemption in which you can pay me off plus all my costs and interests, and your taxes will be completely forgiven. I will destroy the certificate, you paid it off. But if you don't, if 2 years goes by from the date I purchased your tax certificate and you haven't paid me, then in 2 years' time, I can have the sheriff auction off your property to the highest bidder just to satisfy the 10,000 and 10% that I'll get back when it's sold. And remember, he's holding a tax certificate, meaning that's a tax lien and it takes priority over everything else that I owe. Bank loans, everything else. I have to pay that investor is 10% plus any outstanding taxes currently. So after 1 year, I owe him 10,000 plus 10% or 11,000. After 2 years, I owe him 12,100. After 3 years, it's 13,400. And you can see how now it starts to compound every year. So after 2 years, he can demand that I pay him. And if I don't, he can force my property to sale to satisfy his debt or my debt to him. But he doesn't have to force me to sell. That tax certificate has a 20-year shelf life. He could actually let that tax debt ride for 20 years. Boy, $10,000 at 10% per year for how many years before I actually owe more money to the tax certificate holder than my house is actually worth? So that tax certificate holder may approach me and say, here, I tell you what, just give me the deed to your house and I'll forgive your tax debt because you owe me as much as the house is worth. And he bought my house for $10,000. Whoa. And if I don't pay him back, that's exactly what could happen. Well, wait a minute, what about my mortgage debt? You don't have any money to pay that because you just got rid of your house and you don't get any money for it because you owed so much to that tax certificate holder. Then you've got to work your debts out with your bank now, and that's going to kill you. So guys, I'm being very serious here when I tell you, if you can't pay your bills, you better still pay your property taxes, because if you don't, you can lose your house in as little as 2 years. If you don't pay your mortgage, it's about 3 or more years before they actually foreclose and take you out of the house. So under the public right of redemption, the investor who bought your tax certificate can force you to pay up in 2 years. The statutory period of redemption is 2 years. And you got to pay him the amount you owe him, plus the interest, plus any cost he acquired of acquiring the debt. Or that investor might not want to foreclose right away and just let the tax debt ride to find out how much he actually can generate at 10% per year over how many years he can hold that debt over you. The longer he holds that debt open, the more money you're going to pay him. Now, that's if a private investor buys the tax debt. Sometimes private investors don't buy tax debt, which means the town still needs to sell that tax debt to raise the revenue needed to meet the budgetary obligation. And if that's the case, then the municipality itself may buy the tax debt. And if the municipality buys the tax debt, that's called an in rem proceeding. In rem has to do with municipal tax foreclosure process, where the municipality buys the tax debt. And here's the kick in the pants. The statutory interest rate is now 18% per year. And the statutory period of redemption is no longer 2 years, it's 6 months. Ooh, so I got to pay within 6 months, or the town can sell my house and I'd be out of luck. Yeah. So understand, guys, not paying your taxes is a very bad practice to get into. Any questions before I even move on from here? Stephen, maybe you weren't listening. I said yes. Standard rate of a mill is 1/1000th of a dollar, but in New Jersey, it's 1/100th of a dollar. That's correct. And when you do get a math question, as we'll show you when we do the review questions, the parameters in the question will explain whether you're being 1/100th or 1/1000th of a dollar tax rate. Can tax certificate holders wait 20 years purposely and then foreclose on the person to make money on the sale? They could if they wanted to. That's a risk, but they could. So it would pay you if you hold on to it for 2 years or more and they don't pay. I'm sorry, so who would pay you if no one's going to pay you except the property owner? When you force a sale, the auction, the municipality, when they auction the property off, will pay. No. The proceeds from the sale of the foreclosed property go to pay you off because you're a certificate holder. If the private tax certificate holder is given the sale of the house by the owner, the mortgage lien doesn't transfer them. If the private tax certificate holder is given the sale of that house by the owner, you mean the owner just turns the house over to them, Sherry? The mortgage lien doesn't transfer. No, it does not. So unless the homeowner agrees to just sign over the deed, the property will go to foreclosure. Yes, and if it does, remember, you're the tax certificate holder. You're going to get paid off first at the sale of that property. But hopefully that property auctions for more than your debt is worth. Are we allowed calculators? Of course you are, Michael. But if the person, boy, does that, but if the, I'm sorry, the person, boy, I missed it. Go back. But if the person does that, wait 20 years, who is paying 18 years of taxes? Maybe no one. So if a private investor buys a tax lien after 2 years, can they keep the house? Or has to go to, no, okay, guys, hang on a second. Maybe I did a piss poor job of presenting this. And if I do, I apologize to everyone. The book has it laid out in the following manner. If a person is delinquent in their taxes and a private investor buys their tax debt, there's a statutory period, 2 years of redemption. The homeowner can pay off that debt plus the cost of the interest and the cost of acquiring the debt, pay off that debt, and then they're free and clear and there's no more debt. That's if they do it in a 2 year period. The investor doesn't have to force the house to sell in 2 years if the guy doesn't pay. He can let that debt ride. But that investor better make sure he's monitoring that property and make sure that when it sells, he gets his money. And at what point is too late to ask for that property be turned over to him? So again, investing here in tax debt is not everybody's bag, guys. I'm not here to lead a class on how to do it. I'm just explaining what happens when you don't pay your taxes. That's it. When a tax investor buys the debt, does the owner continue to pay? He's better be paying his taxes. If a single person buys a tax certificate, then after 2 years it is left unpaid, can they then hypothetically move? No, it has to go through the sale process. You can't just move into a house. You got to have it sold first. You don't own the house. You own a tax debt on the house. This is why there are so many bottom fishers at the courthouse. Yeah, you're right, Robert. Yes. There are a lot of bottom feeders out there at these auctions trying to scoop up a bargain. All right, so let's continue. Income tax issues for home sellers. Now, if you purchase a residential property and live in it, it's your primary residence. Well, the law states that if you have occupied that property for a minimum of 2 out of the 5 years previous to the sale of the house, then you can qualify as a single taxpayer up to $250,000 of capital gains without having to pay taxes on it. If you're a married couple, you have a $500,000 window of exemption before you have to pay taxes on capital gains. What am I talking about? Okay. So let's just say I buy a house as a single buyer. I paid $300,000 for it 15 years ago. I did some improvements. It's now worth $600,000. That means I made $300,000 in profit from the sale of that house. That's called capital gain. So long as I live in that property for a minimum of 2 of the previous 5 years before the sale, I can claim up to $250,000 exemption from the capital gains and not pay taxes on that. So I take my $250,000 off this amount, and I only have to pay taxes based on a $50,000 capital gain then. In other words, your capital gains exemption minimizes your tax burden when you sell your house. That's for a single person. What if I was married? Then that exemption goes to $500,000. And since it's $500,000, I'm well under that at $300,000, so I pay no capital gains taxes on the sale of that property. That's a tax benefit from property selling for the seller. Did anybody have any questions on the capital gains exemptions? Not seeing any. Oh, hang on. Is the 500 cap if you are married filing jointly? Yes. Apparently, some more questions. Is there any other questions? I don't want to wait around all day for a question. So does it have to be the last 2 years out of the 5? It has to be 2 out of the 5 years previous to selling the house. You have to live in the house as your personal residence for a minimum of 2 of the 5 years immediately preceding the sale of the house. So Peter, did you have a question? I see you have your typing keyboard open for quite some time. I'm guessing that maybe you don't realize that it looks like I'm waiting for your question. Peter, is it Paulus? Okay, apparently so. If the highest auction price will only possibly take care of the tax debt, how will the lender get back the outstanding mortgage? That's between him and the borrower. I know, but your keyboard was open, Peter. Does that mean that you need to have owned the property for a minimum of 5 years? No, it means you have to own it for a minimum of 2 years. If a single owner owns the property and the parents live in the house, how is that considered? As a single person. That's all. If the single person owns the house and you say it did. So they're filing as a single person. All right, I don't know if you guys are actually asking questions or just teasing me with your keyboards open, so. What happens if you own the house for less than 2 years when you sell? Well, unless there's an extenuating circumstance, you don't get the tax write-off. There is a safety valve if it's an emergency, or I don't know how the book terms it, in case there's a special circumstance. Why you have to sell previous to 2 years, you may still qualify. But again, you have to talk to the IRS about that. So good luck. If you buy the house and next year get a divorce, please, guys, with this variance question, stop. You're just variating the permutations of this meaning. Stop doing that. Okay, I'm sorry. I can't answer your questions. You're getting way off track. You don't need to know any of this stuff that you're asking to pass an exam. So I'm going to have to move on. Sorry. By the way, since it's almost 10:30, let's take a break. At 11 o'clock, we'll come back and we'll finish up this chapter and review, and then we'll move on to chapter 9. So I will see you at 9 a.m. I'll leave the chat room open. See you at 9. Or excuse me, at 11. I'll see you at 11, not at 9, 11.